You want to talk about Harden or Maxey first, but I'm curious how you think they match up with this team specifically, and how you think their kind of responsibilities and pressure change because of Joel.
Well, so we can kind of do both at the same time. I think this is the series that when we talked about the different starting lineups and DeAnthony Melton getting that nod over Tyrese for a while,
Yep.
this was the one where you looked at and you said, this is where you fear having to start those two and close with those two next to each other, because we have seen it before. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, if you just say we're going to hunt switches and we're going to put bad defenders in isolation and attack them, the Sixers are going to get hurt by that. Like, that's probably going to happen in this series. I think Tyrese acquitted himself well in that matchup with Brooklyn, had some good possessions on defense against Mikal Bridges, Spencer Dinwiddie, etc. But to be frank, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, a little bit better than those guys.
Yeah, I would think
quite
so.
a bit better track record in the postseason than those guys as top options. So that's concern number one. Concern number two, Tyrese Maxey, his career numbers and his this season numbers against Boston are absolutely dreadful. Like mid 30% from the field. I think for his career, he's averaging like 8 points a game against them. It's up to like 10 this season, which, oh, wow, whoop-de-doo. He scored 10 points a game on pretty decent volume.
Well, did he have one good game against them? For some reason, I think that average is one really good game and then 3 terrible games.
I'd have to go back and look.
Okay.
But overall, it has been ugly and been really bad for Tyrese. And I think there's some things that I saw on tape that you could say, some of this was he's in his mid-season swoon where he talked about his mental health struggles he was dealing with and the lack of confidence he had when he moved to the bench, and there was that whole thing. There are also some spacing issues with Matisse Thybulle. Those are cleared up. I think the biggest change and the biggest thing that we'll see how it impacts this series is staggering Harden and having him be the guy leading those second units, because Tyrese as the guy playing off of Joel rather than Tyrese as essentially the bench captain with a unit of like Paul Reed and Niang and McDaniels and Melton. Those are much different scenarios, and he's much better equipped to be that secondary attacker off of Joel than he is to lead a group in the way that Harden can. So that's where I'd have a little more confidence in him. But look, this is a really bad stylistic matchup for him in that they can attack his defensive weaknesses, whether that's in isolation, his size on rebounds. And then on the other end of the floor, you have guys like Marcus Smart and Derek White, and then the two wings. Like, you put any of those guys on Tyrese, it's just so hard for him to consistently beat those guys off the dribble. And if he can't use his speed, then you become put in a situation where he's got to make shots. He's got to make tough shots too, because the thing with like Marcus Smart, for example, or Derek White, like those guys can get into his chest and they're still not really fearing him going by them. And that makes it like he's not getting open threes. He's getting like hand in his face, tightly contested type threes. So,
and it felt like against Brooklyn, he got a lot of open threes.
Yeah. And look, so some of that's going to be, how do they defend Joel? If they're sending doubles at Joel, which they might, depending on how he succeeds or doesn't against single coverage, Tyrese is going to get some of those second side open catch and shoot threes. And certainly if they can get stops, like the defensive end of the floor is obviously of huge importance in the series. His role as like that transition attacker where he can hurt them with his pace and get down the floor, that's a big, big deal for them, because I think half court points will be very hard to come by for anyone not named Joel. And it's a big proving ground for Tyrese in this series.
Well, and it's interesting you end it with that, because I agree from that perspective. We just talked about Joel's mental state and how he'll handle it. What impressed me against Brooklyn was Maxey's ability in the big moments to step up and just answer the call when they needed him. And I think this will be another one of those series, right? Because to your point, it is a tough matchup for him. He struggled against this team. And I think if Joel is struggling, Maxey will feel that pressure to maybe, try to do more or those type of things. And I think I feel good about where he's at because he has consistently shown in these big moments. Now, not so much in the postseason in prior years. This year, he was very good against Brooklyn, but he's shown in those moments that he's able to do it. So from Harden's perspective, we can get into where you're at with him, but the Brooklyn series, we've kind of talked about it at length. Really weird series for him. Got to the rim, shot well, played well, just missed basically every layup he took. So against Boston, like, what's your confidence level of him going into that game or this series?
I mean, I wish I could give you an answer that was a good one, but
I wish that
what confidence can you have in him after watching him miss layup after layup in the first round, given his playoff history with all these weird mental checkout games where he's needed to be the guy and his team just like couldn't rely on him.
Right.
Like the physical stuff, we don't know how good the Achilles feels or doesn't. And honestly, as much as we've talked about, this series format ended up helping Joel in a way where they did get the longer layoff coming into it. But if we're talking about the series in terms of James Harden, every other day is not really helping
No.
him. Like the recovery periods have been big for him. A lot of his best games have been he gets a couple days in between, gets to rest up a little bit, and then he's full go again. Now he has had some good games in tough spots with fatigue on back-to-backs and what have you, but I do not feel great about an every other day series for the first, I believe it's the first 6 games. It's every
Yeah, I
other
think only
day.
game 7 would be the 2 days off.
That is brutal for him, for PJ. Now on the other side of it, it's brutal for somebody like Al Horford, who I think has slowed down some, and not giving him that rest time is a big deal.
Mhm.
Even somebody like a Robert Williams III, who is pretty much constantly battling, nagging injuries and different things. It's not good for him. So it'll impact everybody, right? Like playing every other day in the playoffs is really hard because it's not easy in the regular season. Then you ratchet up the intensity and all that. Like that's a big deal. But we've seen it for the Sixers specifically. Like Harden, when he does not have that recovery time period, it has been a big struggle for him at times. And so for him to come off that first round series that he had, where he had some big shooting moments, but otherwise just like could not get anything to drop,
Yeah.
to then throw him into this series where, yes, he had the long lead in, but now he's got to produce every other day for, a week and a half or whatever. That's a big ask on him.
So I actually feel pretty good about Harden, and maybe I'm just minimizing the missed layups. It certainly is a concern, and it's not great. But I would feel much worse if we were going into the series going, man, he was unable to get by Mikal Bridges, and he was unable to get to the basket, because that was my biggest fear, right? So this is almost kind of a new concern, and maybe that's why it's not impacting me as much. I think if he can shoot at the clips he did against Boston if he can shoot as well as he did against Boston as he did Brooklyn, that would obviously be huge. I think he did a good job just like running running the offense type of thing. And I feel like the layups will start to fall. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I refuse to believe that he's just going to shoot, 20% from within 5 feet or some absurd stat like that.
It was not good. I don't know what the final number was.
Right. So I refuse to believe that is going to keep up. So I'm feeling a little better about Harden than maybe it sounds like you are heading into the series. And, to the point I made a few minutes ago, but I'll reiterate, this is why you got him. Like, these moments are why you got him, right? This is why you trade for him. This is the series, or these are the first 2 games, or, really the whole series. But especially when Joel, we know, either won't be playing or will be definitely, we think, hobbled. Like, this is where you go out and earn the max deal. This is where you go out and show this is why it's helpful to have a number 2 guy. This is why it's helpful to have a player we all felt maybe, probably should have been an all-star, right? So, yeah,